9 games to go, game by game, a lot of games to play, but we're enjoying it, and hopefully at the end something beautiful.
Arsenal are 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League, 9 games left, and the most ruthless title-chasing machine in English football history is right behind them. Just weeks ago, this looked different. A frustrating draw at Nottingham Forest, a 3-2 home defeat to Manchester United that sliced the lead. Late points dropped against Brentford, a 2-goal advantage surrendered at Wolves in stoppage time, the margin shrinking, the noise growing, the question resurfacing.
Every one of them's got a chance of winning the Premier League, and that's what they put in. That's the performance they put in today. Can't back them no more. That.
And then, response. A 4-1 demolition of Tottenham away from home, fast, vertical, clinical, followed by a 2-1 win over Chelsea.
Flung in by Rice, Timbers on the line!
Built on structure, set-piece precision and composure under pressure. Arsenal now with 16 Premier League goals from corners, a joint record this season. Different approaches, same outcome, 3 points. But here's where it gets serious. Only one current top 6 clash remains, Manchester City away. The Etihad could decide everything, and with players returning, including Kai Havertz strengthening the squad depth at the perfect moment, this Arsenal side suddenly looks more complete than before. This is exactly what changed, tactically, mentally, structurally, and what Arsenal must do over these final 9 games to hold off City and finally finish the job. This is why Arteta's Arsenal 2.0 shouldn't be messed with.
Let's set the scene properly, because the details matter here, and the details are what make the tension real. Arsenal didn't start 2026 badly in the dramatic everything falling apart sense. What happened was actually more dangerous than that. They started 2026 like a title team that suddenly stopped turning control into points. And when you're leading a race with Manchester City breathing behind you, that's not really a wobble, that's an invitation. The warning sign came on January 17th, 2026, away at Nottingham Forest. Arsenal drew 0-0 at the City ground, and the reason that result stung wasn't the point itself, it was what the point cost. Arsenal missed the chance to go 9 points clear. 9 points! That's the kind of cushion that changes the psychological temperature of an entire title race. Instead, they settled for a smaller gap, still strong on paper, but very different in the mind. That's how title races work at the sharp end. When you're at the top, your biggest weapon is separation, distance, the ability to make the team behind you feel like they're chasing something they can't quite reach. Arsenal had a clean opportunity to create that distance, and the game gave them a different answer. The door didn't swing wide open, but it wasn't fully shut either. And City, as we've established, don't need the door wide open, they just need it unlocked. A week later, the tension grew teeth. January 25th, 2026, Arsenal lose 2-3 at home to Manchester United. Their lead at the top cut to 4 points. And this wasn't just 3 points dropped, this was a psychological shift happening in real time. The feeling inside the Emirates, inside the fan base, inside the conversation around the club moved in one uncomfortable direction. From "we're controlling this" to "we're being chased again." Reuters framed it perfectly. Arsenal could have extended their lead, and instead the gap shrank and the title race felt wide open. And buried in that same report was a detail that said even more. Arsenal had now failed to win in 3 consecutive games. The frustration wasn't just visible in the results, it was visible on faces. That's the moment the narrative changes, not because Arsenal were a bad team, but because title races are merciless. They're not judged by how good you look in possession or how much of the ball you have, they're judged by what happens to your lead when things don't go your way. And then came the draws, the painful, draining, soul-sapping kind that don't make for dramatic headlines but make fans compulsively refresh the table at midnight. February 12th, Brentford 1-1 Arsenal. Still top, technically still in control, but emotionally it didn't feel like control. ESPN underlined it clearly. Arsenal's lead over City standing at just 4 points. 4 points sounds fine until you remember who's accumulating those points behind you. Then, February 18th, and this one really lit the anxiety. Wolves 2-2 Arsenal. Arsenal were 2 goals up, 2 goals, and still didn't leave with 3 points. Teenager Tom Edozie, on his Premier League debut, equalised in the 94th minute. Just pause on that for a second. You're leading a title race, you're 2 goals ahead with minutes left, and a teenager on his debut, equalises in stoppage time to take a point away from you. That's not bad luck, that's title race stress showing up in the margins, in the exact moments where champions have to be clinical and ruthless and cold. And suddenly the public conversation shifts from how far ahead are Arsenal to something darker. How many times can they do this before City punish them for it? Here's the thing, it wasn't the individual results that made this period feel so heavy, it was what they represented. Because Arsenal fans have lived this before, not as a lazy cliché of bottle jobs or mental fragility, as actual, recent, painful history. Modern Arsenal seasons where they've led deep into the year and watched the margins disappear one result at a time. The fear isn't that Arsenal are a weak team. The fear is that a title race has a unique and ruthless ability to expose the smallest instability and amplify it until it sounds like a crisis. And in this run, the instability had layers. First, pure table pressure. When the lead compresses, every single match starts feeling like a final. There's no such thing as a comfortable game anymore. Every opponent becomes a potential turning point. Second, fixture congestion and emotional fatigue. Look at the calendar. Wolves away on February 18th, then Tottenham away on February 22nd. That's not just a physical stress test, it's a mental one. You don't just need legs at that stage, you need composure. You need to still make the right decisions when your body is screaming at you and the crowd is loud and the margin for error has completely disappeared. Third, and most suffocating of all, the City shadow. Even when Arsenal are sitting at the top of the table, the real opponent in their head is the inevitability that everyone associates with Guardiola's side. That's why the media narrative starts hardening into one very simple, very pointed question. Are Arsenal wobbling again? Not because the numbers are suggesting a collapse, but because the pattern is starting to feel uncomfortably familiar. And then came February 22nd. And everything changed. Tottenham 1-4 Arsenal. Let that scoreline breathe for a moment. Away, under pressure, after weeks of anxiety and dropped points, and questions about whether this group had what it takes when it truly mattered. Eberechi Eze scoring twice, Victor Gyökeres scoring twice, Arsenal 5 points clear at the top, 61 points from 28 games, and a performance that didn't just solve the results problem, it solved the narrative problem. So what actually changed? Because the difference between the Arsenal that dropped points at Wolves and the Arsenal that dismantled Spurs 4 days later wasn't talent. The talent was always there. It was something else. From the first whistle at White Hart Lane, Arsenal played like a team that had made a decision. Enough of the suspense. Sky Sports described it as a performance full of intent and aggression, and that's exactly right. Against Wolves and Brentford, there had been control without the killer edge. Against Spurs, the edge came roaring back. Not just through possession, through verticality, through earlier entries into dangerous zones, through attacking sequences that ended in actual punishment, rather than pretty patterns that went nowhere. And Gyökeres was central to that shift, because he gives you something specific that Arsenal had been missing in those draws. The "we can go through you" lane. Not just playing around teams, not just recycling and probing and waiting for a gap to appear, but the genuine threat of running straight at you and making you pay. Then Spurs equalised early in the second half. And here's the detail that tells you the most about this Arsenal team. Because in past versions, in the versions that haunt the fan base from previous title challenges, that's exactly where the doubt creeps in. Goal disallowed, crowd nervous, opponent energised. You've seen this before, you know how it ends. This time, the response was brutal. Arsenal took control after half-time and never gave it back. 4 goals, no mercy.
a statement that cut through every conversation about wobbles and pressure and whether this group was mentally ready. This wasn't survival, this was dominance. And in a title run-in, that distinction matters enormously, because you don't only need wins, you need wins that restore belief. Inside the dressing room, inside the stadium, inside the people who have been watching nervously with their hands over their eyes. A 4-1 derby win away from home, under that kind of pressure, after that kind of month, that does exactly that.
This was not Arsenal at their most fluent. It wasn't free-flowing, it wasn't pretty, and for long stretches it didn't even feel like Arsenal were fully in control of what was happening. The rhythm wasn't there, the football wasn't singing. But here's the thing, that's exactly the point. Because on March 1st, 2026, Arsenal beat Chelsea 2-1 at the Emirates in the kind of win that doesn't make the highlight reel, but absolutely makes the trophy cabinet. William Saliba opened the scoring. Chelsea equalised through a Piero Nketiah own goal right on the stroke of half-time, and then Jurrien Timber headed in the winner from a Declan Rice corner. Gritty, tense, uncomfortable at times, and completely, utterly won. This was Arsenal showing something that every title winner needs somewhere in their locker. The ability to drag a match over the line with structure, set-piece precision and emotional control, even when the beautiful football simply isn't coming. Let's be honest about what conceding right before half-time actually does to a football match. It's one of the most psychologically difficult moments in the game. You've worked for 45 minutes, you're ahead, you're heading into the dressing room with momentum, and then in the final seconds before the break, it's gone. The stadium tightens, the crowd goes anxious, the energy shifts in a way that can completely unravel a team's second half before it's even started. Arsenal felt all of that. The match tightened visibly after that equaliser. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't calm, and anyone watching closely could feel the tension in the stands. But here's what this Arsenal team did that a less mature side wouldn't have. They didn't panic. They didn't start forcing everything, launching the ball forward desperately, turning the game into chaos just to relieve the pressure. They kept their shape, they kept their spacing, they trusted that the plan would eventually create something, and that patience, that quiet collective belief is something you only ever see from teams that genuinely know what they're doing. If the Spurs victory was Arsenal winning with open play punch and raw attacking intensity, then the Chelsea win was Arsenal winning with a weapon they've been quietly sharpening all season long. Arsenal have now scored 16 Premier League goals from corners this season, a joint record. And that number matters because it tells you these goals are not accidents. This is a system, a deliberately designed, meticulously rehearsed system that gives Arsenal a way to manufacture goals even on days when everything else isn't working. And look at how this particular match played out. Saliba scores from a corner to put Arsenal ahead. Chelsea equalise through a set-piece sequence that turns messy and ends in an own goal. And then Jurrien Timber heading the winner from a Declan Rice corner. The entire match decided by dead balls, starting positions, blocks, timed runs, delivery, the second ball. These aren't moments of inspiration, these are the fruits of hours on the training pitch, worked out in detail by Arteta and his staff. This is what analysts have started calling Arteta 2.0, an Arsenal side that doesn't need the perfect attacking day to win 3 points. They can manufacture goals when the game isn't giving them anything naturally. That's a different, more dangerous kind of team. There's a specific type of player that becomes absolutely priceless in a title race, the ones who can decide tight, scrappy, uncomfortable matches without needing 10 touches and a clear run at goal, the ones who show up in the margins in the moments nobody predicted and quietly change everything. William Saliba is that. His opener was composed, well-timed, and exactly what a defender scoring from a corner should look like. No drama, just execution. Then, Jurrien Timber produced the winner, heading in Declan Rice's delivery with the kind of conviction that doesn't just go in the back of the net, it goes into the stomach of every Chelsea player on the pitch. Because Chelsea had been growing into the match at that point. They were starting to believe they could get something, and Timber's header ended that conversation completely, restoring restored belief around the Emirates and sent a message to everyone watching. And then, just when Chelsea pushed late to find an equaliser, David Raya produced a crucial save in stoppage time to preserve the win. Not the most talked about moment of the game, won't lead any tactical breakdown, Fred, but absolutely definitely shows up on the final league table when you're counting points in May. That's what genuine squad maturity looks like. Set-piece goals at one end, match-saving moments at the other. Chelsea had Pedro Neto sent off during the match, and that moment could have turned what was already a tense affair into a comfortable closeout. 10 men, 20 minutes left, job done. But here's what makes this a proper champions win ugly story. Even with the numerical advantage, it wasn't a stroll. Arsenal still had to manage nerves, manage moments, and survive late pressure from a Chelsea side that wasn't going anywhere quietly. And they did. They handled the advantage rather than just having one. That distinction between having an advantage and handling one is something analysts point to when separating the good teams from the great ones. Now put these two results side by side, because this is where the real story emerges. These weren't the same type of victory, and that's precisely what makes them so important together. Against Spurs, Arsenal looked like a team that wanted the game open, fast, vertical, aggressive, running beyond, taking punches and responding with something sharper. Against Chelsea, Arsenal looked like a team that wanted control, structure, patience, set-piece efficiency, and the composure to protect a lead when everything around them was getting tight. The same manager, the same players, completely different game plan, both executed successfully. Arteta 2.0 isn't rigid. He can win by outplaying you, and he can win by outlasting you. He can blow you away at White Hart Lane and grind you down at the Emirates 4 days later. And in a title run-in, when opponents know you're coming, when City are watching every result from 2 points back, that flexibility is everything. Because it means you don't have a weakness that can be targeted. You don't have one way of winning that a smart opponent can prepare for. You have multiple answers to multiple problems. And perhaps most importantly of all, this is a squad now, not just a starting 11. The evidence is right there in back-to-back derby wins achieved in completely different ways, against completely different challenges, days apart, under the kind of pressure that exposes every crack a team has. Arsenal didn't crack. They adapted.
Arsenal are top. 64 points from 29 games. City are 5 points back on 59 with a game in hand. 9 league games left. And here's the detail that changes everything about how this run-in feels. Arsenal will play just one team currently in the top 6 across those 9 games, Manchester City, away. That sounds like comfort. It isn't. In a title race, a soft-looking schedule is a trap, because instead of one big headline test, you have 8 games where the danger isn't the opponent's quality, it's your own complacency. Brighton away on March 4th, Everton at home on the 14th, then a break before Bournemouth at home on April 11th, City away on the 18th, Newcastle at home on the 25th. Into May, Fulham at home, West Ham away, Burnley at home, and the final day, Crystal Palace away on May 24th. 5 of 9 at the Emirates. That's real. Home advantage matters when grounds are loud and the pressure is tight. But look at the away trips. Brighton, West Ham, Palace and City. Those are exactly the kind of fixtures where momentum swings fast and leads disappear before you've even realised what happened. The Etihad on April 18th is the pivot of the entire run-in, not because Arsenal must win there, but because it's the one game that can directly affect City's belief. And belief, as we've established, is City's fuel. 5 things. Simple, ruthless and brutally realistic. First, keep the set-piece edge as a weekly weapon. Arsenal have scored 16 Premier League goals from corners this season, a joint record, with 16 of their 52 league goals coming from set pieces. In a tight run-in when open play isn't always flowing, that's your emergency key. Use it every single week. Second, no emotional lapses after conceding. Chelsea proved the concept. Arsenal weren't fluent, took a gut punch right before half-time, and still found the winning moment by staying organised and trusting the structure. Title races are decided in those 15-minute spells where the crowd gets nervous and the opponent senses it. Don't give those spells away cheaply. Third, protect the defensive structure, not the vibe. Good feelings don't travel to away grounds in April and May. Structure does. Clean wins become rare at the end of seasons. What keeps you winning is how you defend when things aren't going your way. Fourth, beat the teams below them clinically. This is the one fans hate hearing, but it's the truth champions live by. No charity points. With only one current top 6 opponent remaining, Arsenal cannot mentally treat anything else as routine. That's exactly how a title race gets thrown away. Not by losing to City, but by drawing at West Ham in early May. Fifth, don't blink if City win the game in hand, because that's the psychological knife edge right there. The 5-point lead is real and earned, but City's extra match means the feeling of that gap can vanish overnight. Arsenal have to hold their nerve when the table suddenly looks different on a Tuesday evening. You're not racing the table, you're racing Manchester City's history. 9 games, 1 pivot at the Etihad, and a team behind them that never, ever stops coming. The last hurdle is simple. It's also the hardest one.